The driveway was already full when I pulled in gravel, crunching beneath the tires like dry bones. I sat in the car for a long minute, hands resting on the steering wheel, watching silhouettes move behind the curtains. The house hadn't changed, same chipped shutters, same sagging porch swing, but something inside me had. I wasn't here for them. I was here because Junie asked me to come. And I had promised. Inside, the smell of rosemary sugar and something burnt drifted from the kitchen. Laughter came from the dining room, too loud, too practiced. Derek stepped out from the hallway, brushing crumbs off his shirt. "Hey, Mom," he said, leaning in for a quick hug that landed somewhere near my shoulder. "Glad you made it." I gave him a small smile. "Thanks for inviting me." "Well, Kylie thought it was time," he replied, already turning away. The dining room gleamed like a showroom. The table was dressed in linen, flickering with glassware and candles. Kylie hovered near the centerpiece, adjusting napkin rings like lives depended on it. My sister Ruth nodded to me from across the table, her mouth full, her expression unreadable. Carl raised his wine glass, eyes crinkled in what passed for a smile. I pulled out the old oak chair near the corner, the one with the loose leg that had always creaked under me. As I started to lower myself, a tight pressure pinched low in my abdomen. I paused, hands gripping the armrests. "If I sit down," I whispered to Derek, who had taken the seat beside me, "my belly will hurt." He didn't even look up from buttering his roll. "Mom, don't start. You're being difficult." The words hit like a slap, casual and well-rehearsed. Around the table, no one noticed. Laughter rolled on. Plates clinked. Silverware danced. I sat anyway, biting the inside of my cheek to stay quiet. The pain was sharp, not surface level. It felt deep, like something hiding under the skin. Across the table, Junie stared at me. Her little hands were folded in her lap legs, swinging above the floor. She wasn't smiling. Her eyes moved from me to the chair, then back again. It wasn't just concern. It was recognition, silent and solemn. Like she'd felt it too. I offered a small wave. She didn't return it. Just lowered her gaze and tugged gently at the hem of her dress. Something in her posture made my chest tighten. Something in the way she sat so still. The room pulsed with noise forks, scraping glasses, clinking voices overlapping in polite competition. Kylie beamed as she passed the cranberry sauce, tossing compliments across the table like confetti. Ruth leaned into Carl, laughing at something. He said her face flushed from the wine. Derek barely spoke occasionally, murmuring to his wife, never once looking my way. I reached for the bread basket, and Carl leaned over from behind, giving my shoulder a firm pat. "Still got that good posture, Elaine," he said, chuckling. I flinched, not just from the sudden touch, but from something deeper. My body reacting before my brain could explain why. No one noticed. I forced a smile and tore off a piece of bread I didn't want. Conversation turned to Junie's school, Kylie praising the gifted program like she invented it. Junie picked at her food, barely eating. I tried to ask her a question about her drawings, but Kylie answered for her. She's very imaginative, loves making up little stories. Her voice sounded like praise, but her eyes warned me off. The pain in my belly returned tighter now. I stood slowly and excused myself, murmuring something about needing a moment. No one asked if I was okay. Upstairs in the dim hallway bathroom, I closed the door and flipped the lock. I sat on the edge of the tub and peeled up the waistband of my skirt. There, just along my left side, was a dark bruise I didn't remember getting. It was the size of a plum, blooming purple and yellow. I pressed it gently. The pain was real, not imagined, not invented. I opened the cabinet, found a bottle of ibuprofen, and swallowed 2 dry. My hands trembled. The edges of the mirror blurred. A memory surfaced without warning me at 14, standing in the same bathroom of my childhood home, telling my mother my back hurt, that I felt dizzy wrong. Her eyes scanning me briefly before brushing me off. It's hormonal. Elaine, you'll be fine. I had believed her. I had needed to. A soft knock pulled me back. Junie's voice barely audible. Grandma. You okay? I opened the door, and there she was clutching a folded piece of paper in both hands. She held it out to me without a word. Junie and I returned to the table together. No one looked up. The cranberry sauce had passed hands again. The wine bottles were already half empty, and the laughter was louder than before, bordering on forced. I settled back into my chair, slowly, careful to keep my voice steady, as I leaned toward Junie and whispered, "What's this, sweetheart?" She didn't answer right away. Her fingers fidgeted with the edges of the folded paper, smoothing them over and over. Finally, she slid it into my lap beneath the table, her eyes fixed straight ahead. I unfolded it cautiously, already feeling the weight of whatever she'd drawn. It was simple, the way only a child's truth can be: thick crayon lines, mostly red and black. A woman sat in a big red chair, her mouth a scribbled blue oval wide, and crying. Jagged black triangles jutted out from the seat like spikes. Around her, little marks hovered like stars, some crosses, some tear shapes. It wasn't hard to recognize the chair. It was the one I was sitting in. I looked at Junie. Her voice was so low I had to lean closer. "That's you," she whispered. "From last year." My throat tightened. "Why is the chair hurting her?" She shrugged, but her eyes shimmered. "You said your belly hurt." "That's where the spikes are." Kylie's voice pierced through the hum of silverware. "What are you two conspiring about over there?" I held the paper up just enough for her to see. Junie drew something. She said it's from last year. Kylie gave a light laugh, brushing it off with a wave of her hand. "Oh, she's always drawing something dramatic. You should see what she drew of Derek last week. He had horns." She sipped her wine and smiled toward the center of the table. Derek glanced over his smile tight. "Mom's always had a flair for the dramatic, too. Maybe Junie gets it from you." I folded the paper, slowly, pressing each crease deliberately. The chair beneath me creaked. No one asked to see the drawing. No one asked me if I was okay. The conversation veered back to vacation plans and new kitchen counters. I looked down the table, but Junie was already watching me. She hadn't touched her green beans. Her shoulders were stiff, her face unreadable. Her little fingers were tucked into her lap again, twisting the hem of her dress just like before. I tucked the drawing into my purse and pushed back from the table. The sound of laughter followed me down the hall, clashing with the steady throb behind my eyes. I stepped into the upstairs bathroom and turned the lock with a quiet click. The mirror above the sink caught my reflection, but I couldn't hold my gaze. Instead, I focused on peeling back my sweater and tugging up my blouse inch by inch, as though I could somehow prepare myself for what I'd already seen. The bruise had darkened since earlier. It stretched farther than I thought, deep plum and mustard yellow wrapping around my side. It didn't look like a fall or a bump from furniture. It looked like something intentional, something done, not something that happened. I reached for the sink, steadying myself. My thoughts circled back to the night before, when I'd fallen asleep in the recliner after helping Kylie clean up. I remembered the taste of her wine, bitter and dry. I remembered waking in my bed, confused about how I got there, my legs stiff, my belly aching. I pressed my fingers gently into the edge of the bruise and felt a wave of nausea rise. I closed my eyes. My own breath sounded loud. A knock soft as rain tapped on the door. Grandma Junie's voice was barely audible. "Are you still in there?" "I'm okay, sweetheart," I called, forcing calm. "Just needed a moment." There was a pause. "I have bad dreams sometimes," she said. "About the quiet game." I froze. "What do you mean, the quiet game? Uncle Carl plays it. I'm not supposed to move or talk or tell Grandma. That's the rule." My hand found the counter and gripped it hard. My stomach turned. My throat felt dry. I didn't say anything back. I just stood there, heart pounding. Junie's footsteps faded, her voice gone with them. I turned slowly and picked up my phone. My fingers hovered over the screen, then moved with purpose. I pressed the numbers 911 and hit the call button. The dispatcher's voice was crisp and calm. I could barely get the words out. My name is Elaine Mercer. I'm at my son's house, Ridgewood Lane, just outside Asheville. I think something has happened to my granddaughter. And maybe to me. I don't feel safe. Please send someone. The dispatcher asked more questions. I answered what I could. My voice shook, but I kept it steady enough to be understood. When I hung up, I stared at the door still locked and felt something I hadn't in years resolve sharp and cold. Downstairs, a cork popped and someone cheered. The family didn't know yet. I didn't tell them. I sat on the closed toilet lid phone, clutched in both hands, and waited for the sound of sirens. From the upstairs window, I saw the cruiser slow as it approached the driveway, its headlights slicing through the dusk like searchlights. A second car followed close behind. The blue strobes weren't loud, yet no sirens, but their silent flash painted the front porch in alternating shadows. A moment later, a third vehicle parked behind them, an ambulance. I unlocked the bathroom door and stepped into the hallway just as the knock came. I reached the bottom of the stairs as Ruth swung the front door open before they could knock a second time. "Did someone pass out?" she asked, half laughing. "It's Thanksgiving, for heaven's sake." The officers didn't laugh. Behind them, the female EMT hoisted a red medical bag over her shoulder. She caught my eyes and gave a slight nod, quiet but certain. I gestured toward the guest room. Ruth turned toward me. "Elaine, what have you done?" "I need them to check on Junie," I said, my voice low but steady. "And me." Carl raised both hands, palms out. "Is someone sick?" "What is this?" Kylie looked at Derek. "Alarm rising." "Did you know about this?" Derek stepped forward, trying to sound reasonable. "Mom, you're overreacting again. This is going to cause a scene. Can we please just talk?" "No," I said. "There's nothing left to talk about." One officer followed the EMT down the hall. I heard the pantry door creak. Junie had hidden herself inside behind the cans of soup and paper towels. The officer crouched, voice soft, while the EMT unzipped her bag. Junie didn't cry. She didn't even blink. She stepped out slowly and let the EMT wrap a soft blanket around her shoulders. The officer asked a question I couldn't hear. Junie whispered something in return. The EMT froze. Her expression changed not to panic, but to something heavier. She glanced at me, then nodded to the officer. He pulled out a small notebook. Derek rubbed the back of his neck. "Can someone please explain what's happening here?" I turned to face him. "I believe Junie is being hurt. And I believe someone in this house knows it." Kylie's mouth opened, but no sound came. Ruth looked stunned. Carl's expression tightened just enough to betray him. In the hallway, Junie stood wrapped in the blanket, her eyes on me, unmoving. The EMT gestured toward the guest room. Junie followed her inside. The officer stayed by the door, arms folded. I stepped back and let them pass, knowing I wasn't the one they needed to hear from anymore. The hospital room smelled like bleach and warmed plastic. Junie lay curled on the exam table, the blanket from the EMT still draped around her like armor. A nurse with kind eyes asked me to step out while they examined her. I nodded, kissed Junie's forehead, and whispered that I'd be just outside the door. My own hands wouldn't stop trembling. The nurse down the hall took my vitals and gently asked if I'd consent to a tox screen. I said yes. Something in me needed to know I hadn't imagined what happened to my body. The nurse drew blood, told me it would be a few hours before the results came in. Back in the hallway, I sank into a molded plastic chair. I reached into my purse, digging for gum, something to focus on something small and normal. My fingers brushed against a hard edge, and I pulled out the small black square, the old nanny cam I'd used back when Junie was a toddler. I hadn't realized I'd tossed it into my bag last week after cleaning out the attic. I thumbed the side switch. The red light blinked. It had been recording. I slipped in the earbuds and hit play. Static. Then faint voices. Footsteps. And then, clear as glass, Carl's voice. "Don't fidget, or your grandma gets in trouble." Junie's small voice followed barely above a whisper. "But it hurts." Another pause. Carl again. "You want her to get in trouble? Be quiet." I stopped the recording. My lungs wouldn't fill. I walked to the nurse's station and asked to speak with the detective again. He returned within minutes, face tired, but alert. "I need you to hear something I said." We stepped into an empty consult room. I played the clip, no edits, no context. When it ended, he exhaled and said, "That's enough." Half an hour later, Carl was in handcuffs. I watched from a bench outside the ER entrance as they walked him to the cruiser. He didn't look at me. Ruth trailed behind, shouting that this was a mistake. Derek stood off to the side, arms crossed, jaw clenched. Later, when the detective had gone, and Junie was asleep in a hospital cot, Derek found me in the waiting room. "You can't let this go public," he said. "This will ruin us." I looked at him, really looked at the lines in his forehead, the fear in his eyes that wasn't for Junie or me, but for his reputation. "You ruined me when you stopped listening," I said. He didn't respond. He just walked away. The nurse came back with my test results. Traces of a sedative. Low dose, but enough. Enough to make the bruises make sense. Enough to confirm I hadn't imagined a thing. When she left, I opened my phone and began uploading the recording to a secure drive, backing it up twice. I wasn't going to lose it. Not again. The courtroom was colder than I expected, all marble and glass and polished wood. Junie sat beside me, her feet not quite touching the floor, a stuffed turtle clutched in her lap. I kept one hand on her back, just between her shoulder blades, grounding us both. The hearing began with the formalities, names, dates, paperwork. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Carmen Pierce, spoke on my behalf, outlining what had happened, the hospital reports, the audio recording, the toxicology results, the bruises. Her voice never rose, never wavered. She didn't need to embellish anything. The facts carried their own weight. When Ruth was called, she stood tall in a stiff gray blazer and looked straight at the judge. "My sister has always been emotional," she said. "This isn't the first time Elaine's let her imagination run wild. She's unstable." Carmen didn't flinch. "And yet," she said calmly, "your sister's imagination led to the arrest of your husband. Your husband, who is now under formal investigation for sexual misconduct involving a minor." The judge turned to the evidence. Carmen submitted phone records, including deleted texts from Kylie's phone that the tech team had recovered. In one message dated 2 months prior, Kylie wrote to a friend, "Junie's been acting weird around Carl again. I don't know what to do." Another said Elaine's picking up on it. "I can't let her stir the pot." The judge's face didn't change, but his voice did. "I find sufficient reason to believe the child is at risk in the current home environment," he said. "I am granting full protective custody to Ms. Elaine Mercer. Effective immediately. Mr. Carl Jensen will remain in custody pending further criminal investigation." A soft gasp echoed behind me. Ruth? Maybe Kylie? I didn't turn to look. Derek sat on the far side of the gallery. Expression blank, arms folded tight across his chest. He didn't meet my eyes, not once. Junie leaned into me, her turtle tucked between us now. The judge dismissed the room, and chairs scraped back in a wave. Carmen touched my shoulder and whispered, "You did it." I nodded, but my eyes were on Junie's face. She was still staring straight ahead, calm but quiet, taking it all in without a word. We walked out together through the tall glass doors hand in hand, sunlight waiting on the other side. The duplex isn't much. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and walls thin enough to hear the neighbors boil water. But it's ours. No creaking floorboards tied to old memories. No hallways that echo with things unsaid. Just space, clean and quiet. Junie carried her stuffed turtle into the living room and set it beside the armchair we'd found secondhand. She ran her hand over the fabric, then looked up at me. "This one's not scary," she said. I sat down, slowly expecting the old ache to rise up, the flinch in my gut that had become second nature, but it didn't come. The cushion held me gently. I let my body sink into it, the weight of everything softening for just a moment. We spent the afternoon in the yard digging little holes with plastic spoons and pushing sunflower seeds into the dirt. Junie wiped her hands on her jeans and leaned over the flower bed, her nose almost touching the soil. "They grow tall," she said, "if you don't step on them." I looked at her, so small, but not fragile. Not anymore. Inside, we made pancakes for dinner because we could. She added cinnamon and stirred with both hands, giggling when batter splashed onto the counter. We ate cross-legged on the floor plates in our laps, syrup on our fingers. She leaned against me afterward, warm and full, her head resting on my side like she used to when she was little. And everything still felt simple. That night, I tucked her in beneath a quilt that smelled like lavender and rain. She curled toward the wall, her turtle pressed close to her chest. I sat beside her for a while, just watching the soft rise and fall of her breath, the even rhythm that told me she was really asleep. In the quiet, I stood and walked back to the living room. I turned off the lights and opened the window to let in the cool night air. For the first time in a long while, I let myself breathe, all the way in, and then all the way out.